Welcome to the second tutorial in this watercolor series. We are using the Karin Brushmarker in order to do some watercolor foliage pieces. If you haven't watched the first episode yet in this tutorial series, make sure that you do that. That's where we introduce the materials you're going to use and also some of the basic techniques that we will be building on in this tutorial. Today we're going to be creating this style of leaf. This one is a little bit different than the last one that we created because it uses two different colors of paint throughout the length of the branch. We're going to be building first with one color and then adding the second one in. We also need to make sure that we are really using our water, which means not too much paint on the page and a lot of paint brush in order to blend that color out. To start this one, with your pencil, make a simple curve on your page. This branch doesn't have nearly as many twists and turns as the last one that we created. And the reason for that is because if they all had too many twists and turns, it would look really messy when we go to put them together. So we'll keep this one simple with one main branch and then only one small branch coming off to the side. You can choose which side you'd like it to come off to. Now the leaf shape for this is sort of a random shaped leaf where you're going to come up and then do a curve that has 2 or 3 bumps on it. You want to sketch these in on either side of the branch, making the size and placement a little bit random. Have some of them pointing down, others pointing out to the side. And just remember, you don't want to have two that are the same right on top of one another because that can look really repetitive. If you notice that you're getting into a habit of a leaf shape, just switch one of them up and pay attention to trying to alternate. Doing some smaller leaves and some larger ones. You always want to do a leaf right at the tip and then other ones coming off after that. But getting that one right at the tip is going to be the most important. 1 or 2 more down at the end. And we're going to use these as guidelines for our leaves, but it's nice to have that map down so that you have a sense of where your leaves are going to go, especially because this one is a little bit more freestyle. Sometimes doing it completely freestyle can be terrifying. So having a bit of a guide can be very, very helpful. If you notice, like me, you have started to press harder towards the bottom of your piece, make sure that you go in and erase that just a little bit before you add your color. Ever so lightly with your eraser, sort of tickle your page a bit, make it giggle. My kids would love this. They enjoy tickle fights way too much, and I hate them, but apparently it needs to be a daily thing in our house. All right, for this you're going to use 2 colors. We are first using the Lime Green 071 and the Grass 253. There's quite a difference between these 2 colors, and we want to make sure that we allow them to blend together. So you're going to need to use lots of water. Water allows for a really natural blend. First, take your Lime Green 071, and we are going to do just a small dot of color at the base of your first 4 or 5 leaves. Next, take your water brush or paintbrush that has water on the tip, tap off any excess water onto your paper towel, and then go in and you're going to pull up from that color and pull it all the way to the top of your line. You're going to notice that the color up towards the very top of your leaf is not very dark, and we want that. We're looking for a very, very light, gentle green color. As you paint, you might also leave small gaps. And again, just like in our first tutorial, those small gaps are a perfect chance to suggest that there might be a reflection or some sort of fold or divot in the leaf, just like there would be in nature. Once you've done your first 5, you're going to come back in with your green marker this time and add a little touch right to the base. You'll see that the color is much darker than the first color that we used, that lime green, and that's okay. This time though, we are going to assist with the color blending, but we're not going to blend it up. We're actually going to blend it down. So take your clean paintbrush, make sure it's nice and clean, tap off any excess water, and then pull the paint down towards where you first tap the marker on the leaf. The reason that we're doing this is because we don't want the blend to come too far up our leaf. Otherwise we'd pull that direction. But by pushing down, you allow for there to be some water for that green to naturally move up, but you're not pushing the darker green in that direction. You can, however, push the darker green if you realize that it's getting too far. With a clean and mostly dry paintbrush, you can just go and push back, pick up some of that extra color, and keep the color in towards the base of the leaf. Let's continue that technique for the rest of the leaves on this one branch. Add a bit of the lime green right to the base, just by tapping it in. And then with your water brush, take that and blend it out to the edges of your leaves. And you can be actually quite messy about this. That's the point of these leaves. They're not intended to be perfect or absolutely beautiful. The only thing we're looking for is to have those nice light values up towards the top and then the darker values towards the base. So again, take your green, the grass this time, and add that to the bottom and then blend down into it. That will allow the green to blend up, but not too far. Every time after I blend, I'm also dabbing my paintbrush off, because if you blend down and then go and take that brush and go up to one of your other ones, you're going to add green right at the beginning of your stroke. So make sure that you're just cleaning your brush off every time. That's also another reason why I like a water brush, because you don't have to dip and clean it in your water every time. You can pretty much just wipe it off and you're good to go, because there's always a bit of water in your barrel. And now let's work on the other branch. Continue all the way down this branch doing the same thing that you did on this first one, and then we will add a little bit more color still to these leaves. Once you have all of your leaves done, before we go back and add in any extra colors, let's do the stem first while these dry. Taking your grass color, because this is the color that we used closest to the stem, you want to load up your water brush or a paintbrush in order to be able to paint that stem in there. I'll use the water brush this time, because now you can actually really see the paint being loaded up onto the water brush. Now, using a water brush for this means that right away you're going to have water being added to the color. So it's not necessarily as strong or vibrant as it would be if you just used a paintbrush, but especially if you don't want to be using multiple materials, it works just fine. You can always go back and add more color to your brush if you need to as you move down the stem. So sketching in those stem lines, and then where it connects, a little bit thicker there. And of course, we always want to go further than the bottom of our last leaf to show that the branch actually was connected to something else. Now, just like I suspected, because I went with the water brush, as I moved down, it got lighter and lighter. So if that happens, you can always come in and just add a bit more color along the branch. I like to add it right at the very bottom and then underneath some of these leaves. That also helps to give a natural shadow look. So just under some of the leaves there. And that starts to look much more natural down the length of the stem. And while we're not looking for this to be an absolute perfect representation of a branch with leaves, you know, oh, it could have fallen right off a tree, because that's ridiculous, and I don't have time for that. I don't know about you. We want it still to look like a leaf and branches, which means that some of these little details, like putting that darker little area right at the base of those connections, will help to give it that definition and that leafiness that we are looking for. Now that this is dry, this is how experts dry their stuff for sure. No, but it is nice and dry. We can go back and add a little bit more color on top. Now, if you were to take your marker and do another line, it's going to be a lot of color that you are adding onto the page, and it might be more than you are bargaining for. So I would suggest taking your marker and doing that additive technique where you put it onto your brush and then going in and even painting a few of the areas. You don't necessarily want to paint the top because that's where the light would be coming, but just adding another streak of color inside sort of the middle area of the leaf is a nice way to add a bit of depth to that color. So this leaf right here, it's a bit light down on this bottom side. So with the lime green and a water brush, we can add a little bit more to the lower portion of that leaf. This one here as well, it's quite light down here, so let's just add a little bit more to give it a touch more visual interest. You want to do this probably more on the ones closer to the bottom of the plant because that's where it would have that really dark color because they would be smaller, a little more closed in. Even after you're done, take a look at your overall branch. Look for areas where you feel like it might be missing a leaf. Like for instance, right here, there's just quite an open space. And so you want to go in and start with the first technique again to add in anything else. The first technique was to add a drop of color, and then you want to just blend that out into a natural leaf shape. And then take your grass, add a bit of color at the base, blend that color out up towards the top, and if needed, add a little bit more of your lime green afterwards once it's dry. I don't think this one's going to need it because we blended that grass color up quite nicely, but it's always an option that you want to keep sort of in your back pocket. I might do it actually once it dries because one thing that I've noticed is that it has quite a large empty space in the center, and leaves have lots of interest to them. So if you look at the leaves that we added that extra pop of lime green to them, they now have even more interest and even more depth. So waiting until this is dry and then adding that depth is going to change the look of this leaf from one that's a little bit boring, a little bit flat, to something with more dimension. So now you have your second type of foliage branch done. This one used two different colors. You really made sure that you had those light areas on your leaves, and it is a great, beautiful, delicate type of branch for you to add to your wreath once we get all of these pieces done. Next, we're going to be moving on to another style of foliage that also uses two different colors in our next tutorial. Remember, if you missed the first one, go back and watch that before you move on to this one, and then the next. Let's get all our pieces together so we can make a perfect, gorgeous wreath.